Welcome to the 700 Club. Dodged questions. That was the hallmark of last night's debate between Vice President Pence and Democratic candidate Kamala Harris. And in a mostly civil debate, a fly stole the show at one point. The question remains, will their exchange move the needle at all in the upcoming election? Eric Phillips has this report.
The American people have witnessed what is the greatest failure of any presidential administration in the history of our country. They still don't have a plan.
The debate began with the coronavirus and what the Trump White House did to navigate the pandemic, which has claimed more than 200,000 American lives.
President Donald Trump did what no other American president had ever done. And that was he suspended all travel from China, the second largest economy in the world. There's not a day gone by that I haven't thought of every American family that's lost a loved one.
Harris insisted the president was not honest with the American people from the outset about the deadly potential of the virus. And when asked if she herself would take an approved vaccine.
If Dr. Fauci, if the doctors tell us that we should take it, I'll be the first in line to take it. Absolutely. But if Donald Trump tells us that we should take it, I'm not taking it.
The dodging began when neither answered whether internal discussions had taken place on a plan in case of disability, given the ages of those at the top of both tickets. Pence refused to say how a Trump health plan would help those with pre-existing conditions, nor if there would be a peaceful exchange of power if Trump loses. Harris would not speak directly to the Biden team's support of the left-leaning Green New Deal and would not say if a Biden administration would seek to pack the Supreme Court by adding another justice if Judge Amy Coney Barrett is confirmed.
I just want the record to reflect she never answered the question.
The two did spar over the conservative Barrett nomination, which hangs in the balance less than a month away from Election Day.
We particularly hope that we don't see the kind of attacks on her Christian faith that we saw before.
Harris said she found that insinuation insulting and pivoted to what she called the real issue.
Joe has been very clear, as the American people are. Let the American people fill that seat in the White House, and then we'll fill that seat on the United States Supreme Court.
Taxes were another battleground.
Joe Biden said twice in the debate last week that he's going to repeal the Trump tax cuts.
Joe Biden will not raise taxes on anyone who makes less than $400,000 a year. He has been very clear about that.
The night did not end without a full discourse on the state of race relations, specifically the deaths of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor. Harris, quoting what Trump said during last week's debate.
The President of the United States took a debate stage in front of 70 million Americans and refused to condemn white supremacists.
Not true.
And
not true.
It wasn't like he didn't have a chance. He didn't do it, and then he doubled down. And then he said, when pressed, stand back, stand by.
There's no excuse for what happened to George Floyd. And justice will be served. But there's also no excuse for the rioting and looting that followed.
Though it was mostly civil, there are a few signature lines from the night.
Mr. Vice President, I'm speaking.
I have to weigh in. Senator Harris, you're entitled to your opinion. You're not entitled to your own facts.
And at one point during the debate, a fly that landed on Pence's head stole the show. On international relations, Harris slammed Trump for trusting Russian President Vladimir Putin over his own intelligence community, and she called the U.S. trade war with China a big loss. Pence countered by saying that Trump is not afraid to take a tough stand, such as the killing of Iranian General Soleimani. And he reminded viewers that Trump kept his word by recognizing Jerusalem as the capital of Israel and moving the U.S. embassy there, something Biden failed to do during his time in the White House as VP. Eric Phillips, CBN News.
Thanks. You know, ladies and gentlemen, I'm saying over and over and over again what the Democrats did in the last election. They said these people will not pay for pre-existing conditions. So if you have pre-existing conditions, you lose your insurance. Pre-existing conditions, you lose. Over and over again, it was said last night. The problem was the vice president was asked that question and he didn't answer it. Now, this is the thing that should be answered. Now, if you go back a little bit in history, and you don't have to go very far, what was called Obamacare, they can now call it the Affordable Care Act, There was a man named Jonathan Gruber, and he was the advisor to Obama as to how to do it. And he basically said, what you want to do is set up a program that is insured to fail. And when it fails, then the private insurers won't be able to handle all the business. And we will begin to move toward a single-payer program where the government takes over health care, which is about, 17–18% of the total economy. And, you know, everybody was opposed to it. I mean, people were screaming, to do away with Obamacare. Now it's going to the Supreme Court of all places. It should have been voted down a long time ago. But what was the deal with pre-existing conditions and all the rest of it? The House had a plan. The Republicans had a plan. There's no question about it. If what is called Obamacare is taken down, then the private insurance will take over, and the government is absolutely prepared. They're not going to let people with pre-existing conditions go uninsured. That is absurd. But that whole thing, you remember Obama went out and he said, if you like your plan, you can keep it. If you like your doctor, you can keep it. He lied blatantly to the American people. If you like your plan, you can keep it. He was so clear. And he lied about all of it. And Gruber had told him, look, you're supposed to lie. And this was nothing but a tissue of lies. People hated it, but the idea was, very simply, we're going to essentially drive everybody to private plans, and then the private plans won't be able to accommodate all the need, and then you'll have these exchanges. We had all those health exchanges and all that stuff that weren't working, and it was deliberately set up to fail so that we would go to a single payer where the government would take over. And everything that the Democrats have talked about along the way about climate change and these other things is a massive government takeover. I mean, at the heart of all this, whether it's the Paris Accords or something else, it always comes back to the fact we're going to create a crisis and we're going to solve it, and the way to do it is by more government interference. And I hope people won't misunderstand all that, but I'm sorry the Vice President, he was asked that question about pre-existing conditions, and he didn't answer it. He didn't say one word. And he should have, because the Democrats are going to be beating the Republicans over the head with it for the next few months. Well, in other news, the Presidential Debate Commission says the next debate will be virtual. Not so fast, says President Trump. John Jessup has more.
That is right, Pat. The president says he will not take part in a virtual debate, telling Fox News' Maria Bartiromo that it would be a waste of his time.
You saying you're not going to participate?
No, I'm not going to waste my time on a virtual debate. That's not what debating's all about. You sit behind a computer and do a debate. It's ridiculous.
The Debate Commission announced the virtual format this morning out of concern for the president's COVID-19 diagnosis. The plan was for next Thursday's event to be a town hall format with the candidates in separate locations and the moderator and participants in Miami. Well, the president has gone at least 24 hours without coronavirus symptoms. That update from his physician, Dr. Sean Conley. In a memo released by the White House, Conley states the president has not had a fever in 4 days and his oxygen and respiratory rate are normal. He also reported the president is showing detectable levels of COVID-19 antibodies. In a video, the president credited an experimental drug for his turnaround.
I walked in, I didn't feel good. A short 24 hours later, I was feeling great. I wanted to get out of the hospital. And that's what I want for everybody. I want everybody to be given the same treatment as your president, because I feel great. I feel like perfect. So I think this was a blessing from God that I caught it. This was a blessing in disguise.
Now, that drug is still awaiting approval. The company Regeneron has applied to the FDA for emergency use authorization. Well, Russia collusion in Donald Trump's 2016 campaign, the topic consumed the Trump administration since day one. Now, declassified material is shedding new light on President Obama's knowledge of an alleged plan by Hillary Clinton's campaign designed to distract the public. CBN's Jenna Browder has the story.
John Ratcliffe, the Director of National Intelligence, has approved the release of nearly 1,000 documents to the Department of Justice. Under scrutiny is the Obama administration's oversight of the Trump-Russia investigation. This at the direction of President Trump after a bombshell revelation that then CIA Director John Brennan briefed President Obama in 2016 on a reported plan by the Clinton campaign to link Russian interference with the Trump campaign. Notes from a 2016 White House briefing by Brennan state that Clinton allegedly approved, quote, a proposal from one of her foreign policy advisors to vilify Donald Trump by stirring up scandal, claiming interference by the Russian Security Service. Handwritten notes list POTUS among those at the meeting. Brennan is accusing Ratcliffe of selectively releasing documents. Quote, John Ratcliffe is anything but an intelligence professional. It is appalling his selective declassification of information. It is designed to advance the political interests of Donald Trump and Republicans who are aligned with him.
I think Ratcliffe declassified the big one with Brennan because it deserves its own storyline.
Former federal prosecutor John O'Connor told CBN News' Global Lane program it proves it was the Clinton campaign, not the Trump team, that worked with Russia to influence the election.
And that's the irony of it, that we've spent 3 or 4 years talking about how Trump supposedly colluded with Russia, where it was all a complete hoax. It's exactly the opposite is true, and it's very profound.
Critics of the Mueller investigation are pouncing on the revelations as evidence that it all amounts to massive abuse of power and potential criminal activity by the nation's intelligence and law enforcement agencies. And as we near the 2020 election, many are asking what then Vice President Joe Biden knew.
The person in the campaign responsible for that is Hillary Clinton and the Democrats. Barack Obama knew about it as early as the summer of 2016. I think it's safe to say that Joe Biden knew about it as well.
DNI Ratcliffe has also declassified a CIA memo that notes the Russians believed Hillary Clinton tried to stir up the scandal to distract the public from her use of a public email server. In Washington, Jenna Browder, CBN News.
Thank you, Jenna. Pat, back to you.
Ladies and gentlemen, I think it's time that they bring prosecution against these people. They've misused the CIA, misused the FBI, tried to hide documents, changed stories. I mean, it's been an abomination. And those people should be brought to justice. How can you trust the government when they do this kind of thing? And they're charging Trump with that. I mean, he's had nothing but merciless attacks year after year. This whole thing about FISA warrants, the whole thing about Russia collusion, the whole thing about attacks and the Mueller report and the impeachment, the whole thing was set up by Hillary Clinton, an attempt to discredit him and to keep him from being elected. You've got those emails back and forth with Strzok and Page about how can we use the FBI to destroy him, to keep him from getting elected. I mean, this kind of, they need to go to jail. I mean, that is bad stuff. John?
Pat, the Justice Department has charged 2 Islamic State terrorists in the murder of American hostages in Syria. El Shafi El Sheikh and Alexander Kote are charged with several counts of conspiracy which could carry life imprisonment. The pair says, the indictment rather says the pair was directly involved in the torturous killings of American journalist James Foley and American aid worker Kayla Mueller and others. The Justice Department says the charges send a strong warning to terrorists.
My message to other terrorists is this: if you harm an American, you will face the same fate as these men. You will face American arms in the battlefield. And if you survive that, you will face American justice in an American courtroom and the prospect of many years in an American prison.
And the families of the victims say they are thankful and hope this will lead to the truth of what happened to their loved ones. Well, for the 6th time this hurricane season, Louisiana is bracing for a potential strike. Hurricane Delta is expected to make landfall sometime Friday with winds potentially topping 100 miles an hour. Officials issuing evacuation orders for several coastal parishes. CBN's Operation Blessing is still on the ground in Lake Charles, Louisiana, helping to clean up after August's Hurricane Laura. And Pat, the ministry also is sending an assessment team to Birmingham, Alabama in advance of Hurricane Delta.
Thank you. And folks, we are staged right now in Alabama to move in as quickly as we can right after that hurricane hits. Of course, we're in the middle of the hurricane, but we will be there afterwards. People need water, they need food, they need they need bedding, they need all kinds of things. And we will have a whole team with appropriate equipment ready to go. It's being staged right now in Alabama, and we'll move in Friday to help those people in Alabama, Louisiana, who are suffering through because of the results of this hurricane. It was building up to a Category 4 in the Gulf. I don't know where it is now. It's probably a 2, but it builds up to intensity. It'll be a very, very powerful storm, and it's just unprecedented. We see this kind of thing, and this is one more tragedy that's taking place in the Gulf of Mexico. So the number for Operation Blessing is 1-800-700-7000, or you can say Disaster Relief Fund. But you know, your neighbors, your loved ones, your relatives will be in that area, and we want to be there to help them.